Today on the Kindling Fire, I'm bringing back Fist Bump Fridays, and that's when we do collaborative shows with other amazing podcasts out there, really trying to help men. And today I've got Dad Up Podcast with Bryan Ward. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, brother. I really appreciate it.
So the backstory that you guys don't know is that we've actually done the show already, and right. I didn't hit record. So there's a little truthism for you that, hey, we're all still learning.
It happens to all of us, man.
So I love what you're doing with Dad Up. I'd love to kind of expose my listeners to a lot of what you're doing. So tell us a little bit more about Dad Up and about yourself.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks again for having me on again. As we know, in the podcast world, there's always little things that happen that glitches, I guess you could say, that make for episodes interesting. But anyways, yeah, I mean, a little bit about me. I mean, I've been a dad for a long time. I don't consider myself a professional like therapist, but I do consider myself a professional dad. I've got a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, and so I've been around the dad block quite a while. And when my boys were, kind of getting older and about to go off on their own, I kind of had this void in my heart. I kind of felt like something was going to be missing. My dad journey was coming to an end, even though technically it wasn't, but my dad journey was coming to an end. And I thought, what else can I do? What else is out there that I could do to really keep that journey alive? And talking to a family member, they said, you really should start a podcast on being a father and what it means to being a father, and interviewing dads about their roles. And hopefully a dad that could be listening to the podcast could take some advice or tips that would help them in being the best dad that they could be. So I've interviewed celebrities, pro athletes, entrepreneurs, business owners, pastors. I've interviewed just a range of people that I've interviewed you that have been on my show. So, I've also been featured in various publications, which has been a blessing. I was featured on HLN, which is a syndicate of CNN. So it's just been an exciting journey. It's been almost 2 years now, and I'm just about 100 episodes in. So it's just been a really, really fun journey, and I'm looking forward to more things to come with the show.
Yeah. One of the things I love in meeting with you and others is that, there's so much you can offer, right? I mean, you just took, hey, I'm a dad. I've learned a lot of things as a dad. Is there something I can offer? And I just want to encourage you listeners that be encouraged that no matter where you are in your stage of life, you very likely have something to offer. And Bryan, your story is that it's, you were transitioning and now you were like, well, what can I do? And now 100 episodes later, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the people that I've learned, it's funny. Some of the things that we have talked about over the last almost 2 years, there have been things that I have learned that I thought, man, if I just knew that or just kind of had that kind of idea when I was raising my boys, I think I would have been an even better father, because I'm not a perfect dad. Even today, I'm not a perfect dad. I make mistakes, but I think I would have been an even better father had I known some of the things that some of my guests have shared with me in their journey. So.
Well, I'd love to. So, I mean, you're just kind of teeing that up. So I just got to ask, what are some great nuggets that maybe you've personally gotten from different, guests that you've had, things that you're like, wow, this is really helpful.
Yeah. It's two things stand out to me, and it's actually two things that I've actually, I'll say I've stolen from dads, and I've used them in my teachings to other dads. But one of them being, that our time with our kids is so precious, and something that I think about. If you look at the statistics, our average lifespan right now is 78 years old. But in that 78 years, you're spending so much time sleeping. There's a number of years in there you're spending sleeping. There's a number of years you're spending traveling. There's a number of years you're spending at your job. And what it comes down to is, I'm not going to break down all the numbers, but essentially what it comes down to is 8 years of you living your life. And those 8 years, if you had only 8 years with your kids, how would you spend that time? Because right now I think, okay, I have right now, I've had 22 years with my son, but I really haven't. I've spent a lot of years sleeping, a lot of years driving, a lot of years doing work, other things going on. but a really solid 8 years with my boys. So when I think about that, I think about time. And something that one dad said to me that I never even thought about, and it's something, like I said, that I preach to my dads now, is that kids spell love Time.
Hmm.
It's so true. And the amount of time that we spend with our kids, and the I guess the presence that you provide your kids in that time is so critical. And so I use that. Kids spell love Time. The amount of time that you're spending with them is how they get the love from you. And then the second thing that I've learned is that, I've talked to a lot of dads that have, talked about in their early years really imagining building a legacy, building a business and their legacy for their family. But one dad said to me once, and I thought, wow, that's powerful, is that your legacy is not built outside your home. Your legacy is built in your home. It starts within and works its way out. So those two things, the time and the legacy, is what I've taken from a couple of dads that I've just used in, my working with dads and teaching dads and helping dads. So,
Man, that's powerful. I think that the pull on men is to build the legacy outside of the home, and make those kind of conquer those mountains outside, while you just think, oh, this will just take care of itself. And the reality of it is, you may conquer those mountains in your life, but if you neglect what's at home, those are really difficult mountains to conquer later in life, kind of making things right and turning around saying, oh, sorry, I was gone for 7 years.
Yeah, well, it's right. I mean, you think about it. When our kids are growing up, when they're in those formative years, their younger years, we spend so much time, or dads have they carry this weight on their shoulder of being a financial provider for the family. So they think they have to work these 80-hour weeks to really build something financially for their family. But at the same time, they're missing out on those formative years. And they say, I talk to a lot of dads say, look, I want to retire when I'm this age. And then they think about it, their kids are teenagers when they want to retire. And I tell them, look, your kids are teenagers now. They don't want to hang out with you anymore. They want to hang out with their friends, right? So you've missed all those years up to them being teenagers. You've missed those bonding years with them. And now you don't have the relationship when they are teenagers to continue that bond. It's not there because you were so absent in those beginning years. So I think it's really important for dads to understand that, or not only dads, but parents, moms too, that's those formative years that are so important. And I think that's what's been the benefit for me being a dad with my boys, is I was so aware of that when they were younger. I wanted to be involved in everything when they were younger. And there was no amount of money that was going to keep me from doing that for my boys. And it's why I honestly believe it's why I have the relationship I have with my boys, because I was there for everything. Yeah.
And let me just play that, the flip side of that coin, because there may be a dad that's listening that's younger, right? And is right in that spot, when you're talking about, they have the financial pressure, they have the sort of, where am I going to invest? And you're basically saying, when you were at that point, you said, you know what, I will be in my kids' lives. You made a decision. And I know you're a coach, and we're going to hopefully get into that, but it's like you were involved in your kids' lives. And so now, all these years later, do you feel like, oh no, I missed out on something? I have a great relationship with my kids, but somehow I missed some other train. And that's that fear, that background fear, like, well, if I don't do this, a lot of men think, then, something bad's going to happen in the future. What would you say to those dads?
Well, I think, listen, I probably have missed out on some opportunities that may have come my way over the years, but I think God has given me a kind of a path to follow. And I honestly believe that, I don't know of your listeners, how many of them have a faith-based, are really focused on their faith-based relationship with the Lord, but I am. And when I think about that, I think, okay, the Lord has put me on this path and I'm following that path. And if I've missed out on opportunities, it's not because I missed out on opportunities. It's because the Lord didn't have those opportunities available to me. Amen. And he wanted me to take a different path. And so I honestly believe that I followed that path based on what he's wanted me to do. So I think if you're a young dad out there, listen, I get the pressures of wanting to be able to provide for your family. I get the pressures of, hey, you do have a job, parents have to work. I get all that. But there are sacrifices that you can make, and maybe it's not necessarily working the 80-hour weeks. Maybe it's just kind of arranging your time, readjusting your schedule, so that way you can be there for your kids. When my boys were growing up and playing all the different sports that they played, and I coached everything that they played, there were days where I had to leave work early in order to make their games. I was a coach, so I had to make their games or their practices.
Yeah.
And all I did was just readjust my schedule. So there were days when I was going into the office at 4 a.m. so I could leave at 2 to be there for their practices or their games. It's just a sacrifice. You have to be willing to make sacrifices in certain areas of your life in order to be there for your family. And just a firm believer in that.
So I'm going to ask you a personal question.
Sure.
I'm just warning you. Do you have any regret for those decisions?
No, I don't. And I say that I hesitated because I was trying to think of different things that may have come up in my life that I look back now and wish I would have taken a different, I wish I would have taken the opportunity, or wish I would have done it a little differently. No, there isn't. I made the sacrifices. I believe I made the right sacrifices. And listen, I work in corporate America. I have a corporate job. Right. And that corporate job has allowed me the flexibility based on my schedule, has allowed me the flexibility to be there for my kids. And if that, way back when my kids were younger, if my employer said, you can't do that, you can't work these different hours, right, you have to be here this time, then I truthfully, Troy, I can tell you, I would have looked at another job. I would have looked at a different career because it was just that important to me.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that was a little bit on the spot, but it's so helpful because listeners, I want you guys just to really dial this in. Bryan's made decisions as a younger dad that years and years and years later, he has the rewards of those decisions, the satisfaction of feeling like he's done what the Lord has asked him to do up to this point. And he has a robust, living, active relationship with his boys. You have 2 boys, right?
Right.
And he doesn't live around walking around with regret. And so a lot of you young dads are kind of at that crossroads. And part of the reasons we do these shows is to offer our lives as testimonies of what's possible. Mm-hmm. And I meet a lot of men with regret. Regret is pervasive, and it's usually regret for prioritizing the wrong thing and then getting bit in the butt years later by saying, if I only could exchange all this money for the love and the relationships that I have with my kids. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be that dad, Mr. Successful, all the money in the world, and you can't buy love and relationship and trust, go ahead. But we are 2 older dads with older kids to say you can live without regret, you can sleep well at night, and you can have a blessed life. And it may mean that some of those trains of success, if you will, pass you by, but you got to trust the Lord. He's got something better in mind than maybe all the shiny objects that the world always says you need. So
yeah, amen to that. And I would add to that and just say, listen, you can still be a successful father and be successful in your career. I've had a very, very productive, very successful career in the corporate world. I consider myself successful. I'm able to financially provide for my family. Now, look, I don't have the Ferrari sitting in the driveway, right, but that stuff's material. That stuff doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the relationships that I build, not only outside the home, but inside my home. And that's what's important to me. I want to be able to be, when I'm on my bed, about to go visit my Heavenly Father, my last breath, before I take my last breath, I want to be able to say, I've lived my life without regret.
Yeah.
And I truly think that I'm on that path right now.
That's powerful. Now, just to share a little bit of my story in that, we made a decision as a family that my wife wanted to stay home with the kids. I have nothing against women working. I have nothing commentary on that. Great. You want to kill it. That's fine. No problem. But in my family, That was one of the things we wanted to try to do. Now, what that's done all these years later, 20 years later, 15 years later, we didn't have this dual income pumping into our house, to get the bigger house and the vacations and then et cetera and et cetera. And so as my kids grew older, they were kind of like, well, wow, they seem to have a lot of money, and we're fine. And we've been taking care of. God's been so gracious to us. And I would tell my kids, I said, you know what, we made a decision a long time ago that your mom would stay home. So that meant that the income would come from me. And I'm a bit of a botch, and I've kind of like stumbled along, but I've done well eventually and been able to take care of everything. And I said, and I worked 2-3 jobs at times in my life as a young dad, just to meet bare minimum. I didn't have to do that long. But the point I would say to them is like, look what we have. Now, we may not have, the vacations in Vail, but we've got a loving family that enjoys to be around one another. Mm-hmm. And I said, and we intentionally did that. And that's as they've gotten older now, and I've got one married, these are the kind of things that they're going to come to those crossroads. And I'm going to be like, well, here's the decision we made, and here's the result. You saw the result of it. So I would encourage you to go that direction, but go whatever. I mean, you want to work, that's fine. It's not really commentating on working. It's just about priorities, decisions based on priorities. So, well,
yeah,
look, yeah, go ahead.
My wife was, she was a stay-at-home mom for many, many years. We were fortunate enough. My wife's she has a degree in when she wanted to be a teacher. And so when my boys started in school, she was fortunate enough that she wanted to work. She wanted to be a teacher. So she got a job as a teacher at their school.
Yeah.
So she was able to take them to school and be there with them at the school because she was a teacher, and she still teaches today. She loves it so much. So yeah, when they were younger, before they were really in that kind of the school age, she did stay home, and we functioned just fine.
Yeah.
And then, she made the decision that she wanted to work and be a teacher, and she was fortunate enough to be a teacher at their school. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's personal preference, what the wife wants to do. But if she wants to be a stay-at-home mom full time, then, dad's got to figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah. So with you being a coach, I just want to ask this last question. Is there anything that you kind of see parallels between coaching a team and being a dad? There are things that kind of you've learned from the coaching world to the dad world, or the dad world to the coaching world. I'd just be very curious, like your insight on that.
Yeah. So I've coached for many years. I've coached for almost 20 years now. And even though my kids are out of high school, I think I've shared this with you, but even though my kids are out of high school, I still coach at the high school level. I'm a varsity basketball coach at their prior high school. But it's something that, when I think back to it, I think back to when I played sports and being the kid. When you picture this, when you have a kid that's playing in a game, they're looking up in the stands not to see all the fans. They're looking up in the stands to see who's there supporting them. They want to see their family. And when I played, my parents worked full time, and they very rarely came to a game. That's no fault of theirs. It's just they had jobs. They had to work. They just couldn't make it. Yeah. So I can always remember going to practices or going to games with my friends' parents because my parents couldn't go. So I was that kid that was looking up in the stands and not seeing any support. And I never wanted that for my boys. That's why I took on the role of coaching in their games and in their practices, being a coach on their teams. I figured if I'm going to be there, I got to take them to the practices. I got to take them to the games. I might as well get involved. And that's why I did. And now when I think about it, I know that as a coach, I have these young men that are looking up to me almost like a father figure. I have players on my teams that have parents that I've never met, because they're not around. And I want to be that role model. I want to be that mentor for them. And I've had players that have since graduated high school that have reached out to me and asked me for advice. And I consider it fatherly advice. I've even sat down with players and broke bread. We've eaten meals together, and I've talked to them about their goals. and about what they want to do, and held them accountable, almost like a father figure. So for me, coaching is fun. I love it. I'm competitive. I'm one of the most fiery competitive coaches out on the court, out on the basketball court. But my ultimate goal is to be a mentor to these young men, because eventually it's very rare. It's a very small percentage of players that actually make the professional level. But being a mentor to them and really guiding them and shaping them for what the world is going to, what they face when they hit the real world, become adults. That is ultimately what I want to do. I just want to encourage them and provide them guidance and leadership, so that way they can be productive men when they get out into the real world, because we know the real world is going to hit them in the chin when they get out of high school and get out of college. If I can be a mentor to them, then I've done my job. It's not about the wins and losses. It's not about, hey, did we have a good practice or not? It's not about, whether we won this game or not. It's more about just being the mentor and the role model for them, somebody that they could look up to and know that their coach is there to support them in everything that they do, off the court and on the court.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm sure you bring that same passion to your show. If people want to kind of follow up with, how do they find your show or other materials you offer, where should they go?
Well, the best place for them is most active on Instagram. So it's Dad Up Podcast on Instagram. I do have Facebook. You can reach, look under Bryan Ward on Facebook. But I do have a Facebook group called Dad Up Tribe. That's my Facebook group. But I have Twitter, I have LinkedIn, I have TikTok, I have them all. And then you can look up my website, daduptribe.com is my website. So they can go there and see, not only get access to the podcast, but also see everything that I'm doing.
Now, are you still doing stuff on Clubhouse?
Yes. From time to time, I do have a Clubhouse club called Dad Talk.
Okay.
We've been kind of on hiatus as far as posting or doing rooms. But I do participate in another club called Imperfect Parenting that I'm very active in, and we do different topics throughout the week. We have several topics throughout the week that we talk about. So I'm not as active as I used to be over the first few months that it was going, that it hit the floor, but I am still pretty active.
Cool. Hey, Bryan, thank you so much for coming on the show and just kind of sharing your heart about your show. Guys, if you're a Kindling Fire listener and you're a dad, you need to check out Dad Up Podcast, because he's offering some amazing advice with his good guests. So thank you so much, Bryan, for coming on.
I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate what you're doing. And I look forward to continuing our friendship, brother.
Hey, guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. Hey, if you did like it, it would be really helpful if you want to send us a review over on iTunes. That would be really cool. And if you want to connect, go over to Instagram, search Troy Mangum or the Kindling Fire, and we can connect there. And that would be a great way to kind of stay in touch. I am doing a YouTube channel, so we do video formats of these podcasts, and we'd love to have you look there. Okay, guys, until next time, be awesome.